All right. Yeah, so we have an esteemed list of panelists today who we are very grateful to have in our presence. People with a wealth of experience, 15, 20, 25 years working in financial services, insurance, payment services, in the compliance space. So they have been there from the beginning before a lot of this talk about technology and reporting you know, um, became the priority. So starting just in the order that the poster is created, I'm introducing the CEO of Pro Compliance in the person of Akinyola Majuyu. Please give him a round of applause. Yeah, so he will be here to give his insights and contributions as we go along. Next, we have Mr. Obina Okafo, who is the MD of Vicobin Consult, with a wealth of experience in the insurance space and in compliance for decades now. He'll be adding significant value to our conversation today. Next is Temidayo Ogunfowoke, who is the Risk and Compliance Officer at First Insurance Brokers. And she will be bringing the conversation about insurance to our audience from in the insurance space here. So you are well represented. We have at least two panelists who are very much versed in the insurance space and what compliance means in insurance. Next, we have Mr. Olaiwola Ige, who is the head of risk and compliance at Global Accelerex payment services company. And he has a wealth of experience as well in insurance across payments, commercial banks, and whatnot. And he'll be giving us, insights into today's topic. Last but not least, we have Mr. Pius Abude, who is the MD and CEO of Simply Alpha Consulting Limited, bringing a massive wealth of experience in the space. He'll be guiding these conversations and answering specific questions that help us at the end of the day to achieve our objective of dissecting the regulations across different sectors in AML technology. Just like in any other sector, sometimes you find that there are several regulators speaking to the same subject. And what we are trying to do today is bring the different experts from different spaces who have touched on all of the different sectors that I mentioned in the financial services space, and who have that experience. They have the hands-on, the know-how. Sometimes they're even able to share insights beyond what is written on paper on the why the regulator is doing this, what are the objectives, and what you can do. So, please take note. Like I said, like has been said before, there's a Q&A space. As we're speaking, questions might come to mind for you. Do not hesitate to write them down in the Q&A. And when we get to the end, we will take them. So the topic for today is dissecting inter-regulatory specifications for AML technology. This topic was very intentionally selected because we recognize that within what might be called the financial services space, there are several regulators. And one of the things that I'm going to do to start this session, but we're not jumping into the panel session first, we're just going to speak about who these regulators are and what role they are playing, or in what ways they are regulating AML technology specifically. So to start with, in 2025, the Nigerian financial regulators, the Central Bank of Nigeria, National Insurance Commission, NAICOM, and Securities and Exchange Commission reinforced the commitment to fight money laundering and terrorism financing by mandating the adoption of automated AML technology. I repeat, automated compliance technologies. These regulations place a strong emphasis on real-time monitoring, intelligent customer due diligence, and automated reporting. And before you move on to the next slide, I want to just highlight the key words here. Strong emphasis on real-time monitoring and intelligent customer due diligence. And when you think about what real-time monitoring means and what it's very directly points to the need for technology, because if you wanted human beings to monitor every transaction, every payment in real time, you will need to employ the whole country. to sit down and observe. It's just humanly impossible to meet up with what has been stated here without the use of technology. So at least just by looking at what is expected, we know we need technology. And when you think about why it's expected to be real time, why can't they just wait for me to submit my report at the end of the month? Is because the problem that we are trying to address here of money laundering and terrorist financing does not wait till the end of the month to happen. And you need actionable intelligence. You need to be able to find out that this happened 2 minutes ago and do something about it before it gets widespread. And for me, I'm very passionate about making sure that when we talk about regulation, the regulated understands the regulator and why they are asking for what they are asking for. It doesn't feel like a burden, but instead they start to work in concert with that regulator to be part of that process, because at the end of the day, we all benefit from a properly regulated financial environment. Next slide, please. Now, if we look at this, so I've broken it down into CBN, NAICOM, SEC. The CBN issued a draft of their baseline standards, and they requested for comment in May, 20th of May, 2025. So most of our existing clients reached out to me and said, hey, do we comply with this? What is it saying? And when I started to receive it, I thought, okay, since they're asking questions, this is what we do. Let us have a session to talk about it. What has CBN said, and are we in line or not? So the key requirements from that document have been summarized here. Of course, it's quite broad, but again, real-time transaction monitoring is mentioned, which is mandatory for detecting anomalous behavior, including crypto activity, large cash flows, and cross-border transactions, among others. The AI ML enabled detection, they're saying, have AI and machine learning, because like we've said, even with the basic technology, the absence of AI, the speed of assessment of things can be slow. But then with the support of AI, we can be quick about it. And with the support of machine learning, we can learn patterns that help us to detect behaviors that have been developed over time, develop a profile for each of our customers, be it an individual or an entity. And then to have screening capabilities, the system must include real-time PEP, sanction, adverse media, and internal watch list screening using fuzzy logic. Case management, maker-checker workflows, automated alert handling, and end-to-end audit logs must be part of whatever systems that you are adopting. Governance and security, role-based access controls. So whatever systems you're adopting, according to CBN for your AML, should have role-based access controls, data encryption, multi-factor authentication, and board oversight. Implementation timeline, full compliance required within 12 months of the final issue. I do not think the final issue from CBN is out, but you want to be ahead. You want to know exactly what they're saying and be ready. So when the final issue comes, you're putting it in your budget, you're reaching out to finance and whoever and saying, look, I want to obtain this technology so that I'm ready I'm able to comply with the standards that my regulator has put out. So that's a summary of what the CBN has said. There's a more detailed document. I think I've asked my team to share it in the chat. They'll share it at some point. If you didn't receive it, you're welcome. So you can study it. The next is from the SEC manual, compliance manual of 2022, which was referenced for this. And if you look at it, it's saying the same things that the CBN is saying, which is automate your KYC and CDD systems. You must operate at onboarding and for ongoing monitoring. Transaction pattern recognition, real-time or near real-time detection of red flags should be in place. Sanction PEP adverse media screening, mandatory with continuous updates. So you should always do that at onboarding and with continuous updates. Risk-based customer profiling must be dynamic and adjustable. And I think that point is important because it's not about saying this person is low risk at onboarding and then I was fine. You must have a system that's able to detect, that's where transaction monitoring comes in, the risk that they may portend later. And we're talking about compliance dashboards and logs. So of course you have a technology that can show you the information that you're processing in graphs and charts that give you insights that can lead you to determine what new rule you want to set up, for instance, or what new type of fraud you want to start to look at detecting. Okay, that looked a little bit. Yeah, so here we have It's fine. I can see this is for NAICOM. So what has NAICOM said? And like I said, there's an intersection between. So I see some people are in the lobby. I don't know if someone can manage that. I see a number of people chatting, asking to be let in. Salu, Adugo, Temidayo, can someone please handle that? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so back to NICOM. NICOM has said the same thing. So it's just like echoing the same sort of things. Automated customer due diligence, ongoing monitoring systems must support onboarding and behavioral surveillance, risk scoring, to being able to classify your customers as high, medium, or low risk based on set parameters. Reporting to the NFIU, STRs and CTRs must follow standard digital formats that allow them to be uploaded on the Go AML. Audit trails and training records, evidence of system activity and staff sensitization must be digitally stored. So when you're looking out to acquire technology, whether you're NICOM regulated, SEC regulated, CBN regulated, you want to understand what exactly have my regulators said need to be part of like the checklist process for me to decide on acquiring technology. And we know that sometimes like there are other regulations from these regulators, but today we're speaking specifically about the technology. So regulatory compliance is much broader than today's topic, but I want to bring us home to the topic of what did they say about technology? What have they said? Am I in the right place or not? So we're going to now move into the panel session. I've already introduced the panelists if you're just joining. So we're going to go straight in and start to ask and then get responses. So my first question is for our esteemed panelist, Mr. Pius Abude. What can you say are the common AML tech expectations from Nigerian regulators?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tosin, for the quick tour of the entire guidelines of requirements and then the intro that you've done. I think that sets the basis for the participants to benefit more from this session. I mean, you've spoken clearly to the requirements. It's strictly strategic in lines with global best practices. And just one key word I would like to emphasize there is automation. Now, before now, the various regulators have actually indicated what they require each of their players to do in the space of AML and CFT. However, like you said in your intro, you said that there is no way the volume, the attraction of clients into the various industries, those firms and companies is becoming bigger, which makes physical or manual monitoring extremely cumbersome and risky. And if any regulator is to take that challenge seriously, it needs to actually put its feet down to be able to establish clearly how automation will play. However, in that area too, it did not leave it to whims and caprices of the various organizations. Okay, it has now gone to specify clearly what must be done. And in doing that, it's not missing words. It detailed it clearly. You've mentioned it right not quite long ago. And it also went ahead to clearly stipulate what the various the various institutions will do. Now, your question is, what are these expectations? It's just for them, okay, like CBN, NICOM, and SEC. All of them require real-time monitoring, okay? And they have actually given them guidelines for KYC, CDD, ongoing risk-based profiling, sanction and PEP screening, automated STR, CTR generation, and the likes of that, you know. So, I mean, in practice, these things are cumbersome, considering the volume of transactions that the various institutions, the banks, insurance companies, the finance houses, fintechs, and all others churn out daily. It is extremely impossible for any organization to say they want to recruit an army of people to begin to look through each of those transactions and then begin to look at those ones that qualify for reporting in line with the guideline on KYC, KYB. Therefore, it is best to automate. That is the main thing. Now, I also went through that guideline and found out that there is also an implementation time frame, 12 months. 12 months, it looks like 12 months really, yeah? That's how many, 365 days. If you start a technology implementation, requirement gathering alone for this type of requirements that the regulators have requested, it could even take 6 to 8 months. Therefore, what will organizations now do? Look for maybe off-the-shelf. And in the course of looking for off-the-shelf solutions, you just have to look for the best that meets the requirements as specified by the regulators. Because when it comes to regulation, there is no 98% compliance. You have to meet it. Therefore, organizations, I think, they should look for institutions, organizations that have developed some of these solutions and then do a requirement assessment. And I know there are some that are currently in the system. For example, Probe, I don't even know how Probe got to the level where they are to be able to develop the requirements they have in their current systems. But I can tell you that they speak categorically to some of these requirements, which almost means that are they aware who is copying who? Is this CBN looking at Probe requirements? What the capabilities to develop this requirement or the other way around? I really don't know. But I'm telling you that the best bet for every organization at this point in time, given the 12-month implementation time frame, is to look for a company that can provide these things. And I will be thinking that if they are smart, they should look at Probe before they go anywhere. I know there are others, a lot of them say, word check, this, that. They do not meet our requirements one for one. And I think smart organizations know where the market is. And I believe that they will go a long way to helping these organizations. So at the point where they are now, if any organization that is serious should assess these requirements, call for maybe demos from these companies, and then choose one. Don't try to say, because I spoke to some organizations, said, we want to try and build our own. You want to build your own. Okay. I can only wish best of luck in that kind of situation. But I think this is not the time to build your own. This is time to look for what meets your requirements in the market. And I think there are companies that are doing that very well. And I would strongly recommend that. Take a visit to Probe and see whether you will not meet your requirements. Thank you very much, Tosin.
Thank you so much, sir. That was brilliant. A really brilliant outlook at the whole thing. I see someone has their hand up. Please remember that what we have said is, if you look at the top of the screen, you'll see Q&A. Go there and type your question there, and we will respond to it. So please, let's give a round of applause to our speaker as we move to the next question. So if you have your hand up, we will not be able to attend to you. You can put your question in the Q&A and it will be attended to there. Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Olaiwola Ige of Global Accelerex. Do Nigerian regulators expect STRs to be filed? Well, I think this question has been somehow answered, but I will go ahead. STRs to be filed manually or electronically?
Oh, okay. I was speaking on mute. Please confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Go ahead, please.
All right. Thank you, Tosin. Just like the previous speaker said, it's cumbersome these days to do manual. Even every organization knows that manual processing is gradually fading out. So everybody's adopting automation. The same goes for regulator as well. So everybody file STR, that's suspicious transaction, automatically. You're supposed to render it. But then the twist to this discussion is maybe most organizations are not even aware of that. And what they need to be aware is that to you alone now. I was part of a project with the CBN, the project initiation, where they're coming up with requirement gathering. Even regulators themselves are automating their processes. So they're going to be integrating with your platform, with your system, all organizations under their watch. So before you even file, the regulators are aware of what you're supposed to file. So if you're not filing, they know. So that's to tell you that things are changing. Gone are the days that you're waiting for them to come back and tell you, oh, you didn't file this. They are also planning to monitor real time, on time, real time now. So it is just for your best interest to know that you are filing your returns as and when due or whenever it happens, because the regulator themselves are also monitoring your system. So you don't want to be on the wrong side of the law when they come back to you and tell you, we checked your system and these are the STRs that we observe. I'm sure you'll be surprised that, oh, how did they get to know? But they're getting there where they also would be integrating to your systems, and then they also are aware of all the STRs in the system. So you can't keep up with the manual filing because they are already aware. Maybe they are aware 2-3 weeks earlier before you even start saying you're filing. So everybody's adopting that system of automated returns. And that just simply to answer your question that yes, organizations are expected to automate their STR filing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ege. I think I love the insight that you provided on how the regulators are even looking to adapt technology themselves so that they can connect directly to you, so that there is no place to hide. And if you don't have the technology for them to connect to, I think you're just setting yourself up for an automatic sanction. Because if there's nothing when they come around and say, I want to connect, and you're saying, well, we are still in a meeting, I'm sorry. I don't know if you've heard about the recent sanctions that Barclays received and some other organizations in the UK. And you know how our regulators, we learn from others. So just make sure you're not in that position, because it can be very uncomfortable where your license is at risk or the sanction is so high that it puts the whole business at risk. So thank you so much. I love that insight about regulators are working.
Tosin, just to add to the latest sanction in the UK, and maybe some of the participants may be aware of that, it's called a Monzo bank. Monzo is like a technology bank in UK, and they've just been sanctioned, millions of pounds sterling because of AML and STR infractions. So that's just the recent one in the market now.
Thank you so much, sir. I can see people still putting their hands up. I want to direct you to the Q&A at the top of the screen. So if you look at the top of your screen, you see a number of widgets. One of them says Q&A. Please put your hand down and go and write the question there in Q&A. If you cannot see Q&A, you should at least be able to see the chat. So if you can't see Q&A, put your question in the chat and someone will attend to it. Because we cannot unmute your microphones for now. We cannot attend to whatever it is that you want to ask. So you can put your hands down, please. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for that. Like I said, the key thing I'm taking away is regulators are also working to automate so that when they receive your information, it's almost like real time as well. And then they have the technology to process all that they are getting. I remember one time listening to someone from the NFIU, and it was great to hear that perspective about how they too face challenges receiving so many STRs that are going nowhere, and they want to start to adopt technology on their side that can help with filtering out, learning patterns and being able to tell them also, okay, focus on this, reduce the workload that they have to do with all the reports that they are getting. Next question is from Mr. Obina Okafor, who is a seasoned panelist in the insurance space. Must AML systems integrate with identity verification? Is it mandatory that they integrate that? Or should they just focus strictly on AML? I think this was, before you answer, this was a question for us as well when we started, because we were like we came into the market as purely AML. If you cannot see the Q&A, please go to the chat where you are typing that you can't see the Q&A. Put your question there. Thank you. So as I was saying, AML systems integrate identity verification, must they? Mr. Obina Okafa, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Tosin, for this enlightening session, and thank you very much, participants. I want to say that the pivots upon which the concept and implementation of AML CFT CPF stands is based on customer identification and verification. Because where you fail in that, you have failed in everything else. Now in the insurance space is risk management. And the insurance people know what it means to identify risk before they apply the rate to pay in terms of premium. But sometimes you discover that the real risk being assessed there is not the risk that has to do with the risk that are being covered, but is the human element risk that we're talking about under AML CFT. And so you must be able to identify who the person or the entity you are dealing with in the first instance comes to be. So it is something that you cannot achieve without having that properly identified, streamlined, without having that properly gotten right. So the issue that has to do with AML CFT, whether it must be properly verified, is not an option, is basically compulsory if you must have that space properly gotten. So it's important that every entity that you onboard, every client, whether as individual or as entities, you carry out a proper identification of that. And as business expands, as the business grows, the volume of transaction becomes so large that the ability to go one-on-one to begin to search it and there to identify who is who and how they operate will become very cumbersome. At some point in the industry, personally, I was advising because of the at the time we started newly and all of that, I encourage people that well, there may not be need for automation and all of that, but as the system industry got grown, I started also recommending the fact that for you to get it right, because we started having sanctions also, we started having skips, we started having near misses or misses, whereby people transactions were, people onboarded transactions that were not supposed to be transacted, sanctioned entities, sanctioned individuals, and the queries started coming from both NFIU and the regulators and all of that. So because of that, it became very important that even when I think you've gotten it all, it's important you have a tool that will help you to do that. So the issue that has to do with integration of your identity verification cannot be overemphasized in the now, because I remember at the time also when the regulator started, we were filing and sending documents, sending Excel sheets, sending when at some point they asked you to stop sending those things. You have even to send them electronically, and now building up a platform for NFIU from your side when the GoML came up. So, but for you now to be able to get the right issue. In fact, recently I was in a meeting when the head of other financial institutions in NFIU, Mr. Ugumbo, was talking about the almost near or non-existent of filing or returns because of maybe that is something. There must be a gap in terms of suspicious transaction reporting. And so there must be something that will help you to throw up those things. And so at this stage, we are considering the level of automation. The regulator, the law enforcement agency, the intelligence agencies need a system that can help both the regulator, law enforcement, and also the operators to be on the same page. And the fight against criminals or money laundering or terrorism financing or even pollution financing must be total from all ends. So if we all are on the same page and adopt technology as much as possible, we'll be able to have those things. The bad guys can be circled and easily identified and dealt with. And if we are to talk about technology, there are several technology provisions and solutions. Probe compliance has been one of those that have recommended, and most people have also tried it to confirm that it meets up to the regulatory pronouncements by NAICOM regulations of 2022 and most other or circulars or recommendations that have been provided. I also want to say that even if NAICOM or any other regulator like SEC or like CBN have come up with a timeline to implement this, even if you are a regulator like a primary regulator, NAICOM or SEC have not given that timeline, it is in your own interest actually to go ahead, because definitely it will come. That directive must come. It's important for you to begin to look for which one, and those who have adapted, not to begin to custom. I mean, they have already understood the market, understand the industry of what you have, is not to have a generic provision that you now begin to have issues to struggle with. So, probe compliance, I'm aware, has signed on many institutions, many organizations in the insurance industry, insurance space. So I will strongly recommend that those of us who are yet to get that, I know that discussion also took place in the last meeting of the RAC, Risk Audit and Compliance Committee, and came up there. So probe compliance is a veritable instrument that can help us get that. Everything you did about the screening and boarding of clients in terms of politically exposed persons, both locally and internationally, sanctioned entities, your identity verifications, and NIMC, BVN, and all of that. You can get it from probe compliance. I can assure you that. But what I'm saying that at this stage, we are in the industry. There's no running away from it. This is not an option. It has become something that is compulsory and mandatory.
Thank you so much, sir, for that contribution. I think this is a really interesting question because it speaks to the journey of probe compliance, where, and I've seen it with other players. So what we did, like a market survey, and we found that many players were, oh, I'm strictly AML and not providing the rest of the services. But as we entered market and started to understand what the regulators were saying and why they were saying it, it became essential that we included the integrated identity verification, both at the individual and entity level. So if it's a business, you can check their certificates of incorporation, business names, or incorporated trustee details. And if it's an individual, whatever ID type, the statutory ones are there, BVN, NIN, and even all the others, we had to integrate so that it's a simple process for the persons who are mandated with this task of running the checks to do it in one place. So we had the one-stop shop ideology. Let them have ease and simplicity around their work. So thank you so much for that. Before we go ahead, I want to ask the panelists, please try and summarize your responses as much as possible so that we can run through everything and have time for the audience, who I see already have a ton of questions for us. Okay, the next question is interesting, and I'm directing it to Mr. Akinola Majoyobi. Can one tool serve insurance firms, capital market operators, and banks?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this call. It's a sincere privilege to have so many people on the call. We have over 307. The answer, quite frankly, is yes, but yes with a significant caveat. I can only personally speak for probe compliance, and as we've seen at the beginning of this call, when it comes to the regulations, there are a lot of corresponding or very similar regulations. Your standard regulations for KYC is uniform across board, whether you're an insurance company, capital markets, retail banking, commercial banking, a fintech, a crypto agency. The standards for KYC are pretty much the same. When you then take it further from an EDD process, sanction screening, transaction monitoring, payment screening, and then when you go into the reporting requirements, they're all pretty much standardized. Yes, there is a difference from a regulatory reporting requirements for an insurance company compared to a retail bank or even a microfinance bank. What we do with Probe is make the tool unique in the sense that it's highly compatible to different industries. So Probe as a tool is not a standalone AML sanction screening tool. You can do your sanction screening from local lists, your NICOM, for example, which is the top sanctioning body for Nigeria, all the way to your OFAC, UKHMT, and all the international sanction lists. Probe incorporates a very, very unique adverse media screening tool that screens in real time. And I can obviously from experience tell you for a fact that tools like WorldCheck don't screen in real time, just based on experience. So we check adverse media in real time, analyze the data, and obviously pick out the keywords. Probe Compliance specifically has its own dedicated PEP database. So with all our PEP database and PEP records, we have an image of the PEP, we have an RCA connection of the PEP, full PEP profile, and the actual political positions the PEP has undertaken because of definitions. The Wolfsburg criteria, for example, would tell you that PEPs outside office for 24 months are no longer PEP. So we cater to that. So essentially, our advice is with whatever tool you take, ensure that it meets those fundamentals, because there are some fundamentals that are across both industries. The KYC standards and the for an insurance company would be pretty similar to a large extent to what you have in capital markets and on other industries. Thank you very much for paying attention.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. And I like the point that you raised about PEP identification and how there are different criteria. Very key, because many times we have people ask questions like, who is a PEP? Is because by definition, when you look at it word for word, is politically exposed person. And if a person were not to use a particular criteria, then you say, well, I visited Tinubu last week. Am I a PEP? You know, so I like the fact that you talked about criteria and how that is applied in your technology to identify a PEP. I've had people, you're laughing now, panelists, but it's true. I've had people say, but this person is close friends with this, and I know that he's visited him recently, is a PEP, and your tool didn't catch that. No, so there are criteria that define when a person begins and ends, when it starts and ends. Otherwise, it would be nearly impossible to say this and that. And of course, speaking on the point of PEP, I saw that someone already asked the question. I don't want to preempt and I don't want to start to answer questions yet, but Probe is a tool that was built with the expertise of someone who's been doing this job for many, many years and understands what the criteria are and considerations should be. And so with Probe, you can identify PEPs very easily down to the images where there's a risk that names are similar. So let's move on. Thank you so much again, Mr. Akinola, for that response. I think the short answer to this question is yes. It's because if you look at what I said at the beginning, all of the regulations are sort of tied in together. Check your KYC, do your CDD. NAICOM said it, CBN said it, SEC said it. And if there's a new regulator tomorrow, they will say the same thing. And so, yes, you can use one tool. And then also when it comes to reporting, some tools provide reporting templates across all sectors. Some don't. Probe does. So yeah, you can use one tool across all sectors. Next slide, please. Okay, what happens if a regulated entity fails to adopt automated AML system in time? It's interesting that this is your question because you somehow answered it already at the beginning, but I'll let you go ahead, Mr. Pius Agudi. Your microphone is still muted.
I remember to open up my camera so I can be visible, and I forgot to unmute my mic. Thank you again, Tosin, for this question. I mean, this is very obvious. You've spoken to it. A lot of people have spoken to it. Even the entities know the implication. But this is one typical Nigerian saying that if the police is not your friend, maybe you want to try the thug, okay? And for these institutions, I would say if you don't want to adopt automated AML systems, maybe they have IFA or Oracle that they can consult to be able to meet the dictates and the implications of not having having an automated system. But the truth is that why would you not adopt it, especially when you can get it off the shelf? If I work for an entity like that, I will just go up to the market, but I will do thorough screening because I want to get value for my money. There are For instance, the probe that I've used, and some companies that have used it have recommended that sometimes you can even, they do their implementation as short as a 30-day cycle. Requirement gathering, like which I did so much in my past life, sometimes takes 6 to 8 months before you start decoding, before you start. And then if you even buy the foreign systems, so let me just use it for a general word, the foreign system, World Check, Iguana, and all the types of names, they visit, come, do that, 8 to 12 months, you are still under implementation. But the regulators are also aware that there are local systems that give the value of quick turnaround time. And I think in such institutions should take advantage of those opportunities. And one key thing I also see in this, our domesticated systems, is because they understand the wallet of different entities. And I have seen beautiful pricing models for probe as well that fits into different, should I say, institutions' pockets. So what they just need to do is to have a contact, discuss what fits into your wallet, and jump into the implementation with your feet on the road. I don't see any institution who wants to go and try what the regulators want to do. I'm very sure that after this time around, big sanctions will begin to happen. I don't think there's any institution here who wants to try the rot of the law. Thank you very much, Tosin.
Thank you so very much for that response, Mr. Pius. Starting out very funny, but yeah, touching on the very key point. And it reminded me of an experience, although outside of the financial services sector, where I was given a job in the healthcare space. And when I got there, I was excited, new job. And I got there and I asked them, where is the computer? They said there is none. But then they had given me so many rules because I was going to manage a lot of inventory. And they said, if it's missing, they will deduct this money. They'll do this. And I looked at them that, you've not given me the tool to make sure this inventory is protected, but you're going to deduct. So I resigned immediately that day. I just got the job. But I said, you have given me an impossible job. And that's what Mr. Pius is saying. I rejected the offer immediately. I said, you want to kill me because I will not have a life. I have to spend my whole life here watching the inventory with my eye, making sure nobody takes it, checking people's bags. That's essentially what you're trying to do, to try to monitor transactions with your eyes. No, just stay there, lock yourself inside somewhere, and then run around for the rest of your life looking at. It's not possible. It's just not possible. And some people tell me, oh, we are small. But I'm sure that at the beginning of the year, you had management strategy meetings and you were projecting growth. And the sales team was saying, if we adopt this, if we adopt mobile app and screening from home, we are going to grow at this rate. Do you want to wait till you have grown? And let me tell you another funny thing for the small organizations. You are a target. Money launderers know you are new and you don't know anything, or assume that you don't know anything yet. So they will come to you first. The sanctioned people will come to your place first because you are new. In fact, they're probably sitting down looking, where is the newly registered payments company or the newly registered MFB or whatever? Let's go there because they probably don't have things in place yet. And they will use your place, commit that thing. When the regulators come, they'll say, this person was on Nigerian sanctions list and they did all this in your place. Fine, revoked. So it's real. I like to make it practical and real for everyone. What you are saying when you tell me, oh, not right now, it's not a priority. You are putting your business, you're making yourself an accessory to crime first. Second, you're putting yourself at risk of being sanctioned or losing your license. So it's that severe. And so automate in time. That's why the question is relevant about it being in time. Next question, please. Okay, this is also for Mr. Akinola. Is AI or machine learning, based on the regulations that have been put out, a required feature in these systems?
Thank you very much for the question. I think just based on experience, and I'll touch on this because AI, you could give it a time span of the last 4 or 5 years, but those who are on the panel or on the call who have been privileged to work on transaction monitoring systems pre-AI, so I'm talking anything from about 2000 backwards, you can understand the difference. I think it's not only required, but it will be essential in the future. The power of AI is very unique, and if harnessed correctly, it can actually make the work a lot simpler from an identification standpoint or using various different algorithms. AI is extremely powerful. So I would say yes, if you're looking at any solutions moving forward, always look at the systems that actually have an AI capability. I would say API connection is also very significant because then that opens the channel for further integration. But I think AI is unique. We are looking at identifying patterns, linking politically exposed persons, linking neg news to transactions, linking patterns and behaviors. So there's a lot of things that that AI can easily identify and quickly flag on modern systems. It's something that Probe is obviously fully built on and obviously looking to constantly evolve. If you look at just generally speaking, when you go into tools like Gemini or even Google have incorporated AI into their searches as well. But there's also obviously a caveat to say, well, it's not always accurate. So I'll say be careful as to what AI tool you use, but the future definitely. And it's across board. If you look at just industries in the future, I'm sure I'll give you guys a little homework to take with you. If you check, just Google, the jobs that AI will take in the next 10 years or 5 years, you'll be amazed at the results. So AI essentially, as it evolves, as it continues to develop, only gets better, only gets smarter, and from a compliance perspective, makes the jobs a lot easier and easy to identify patterns, easy to identify especially in transaction monitoring space, irregularities that can help identify and detect and stop financial crime. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that response. I think the summary is that AI does a great deal of, makes a big deal in improvements to what you're able to do with basic technology. Some of the regulators have mentioned this in their baseline standard communications. And if you're looking at a tool or acquiring a tool, you want to get one that has integrated AI in certain capacities, such as learning patterns or processing information. The next question I will read goes to Mr. Olaiwola Ige of Global Accelerex. How do regulators expect financial institutions to manage vendor relationships when outsourcing AML systems? Oh, this is a big one. How do regulators expect financial institutions to manage vendor relationships when outsourcing AML systems? Over to you, sir. You're muted.
Yes, I'm trying to. Okay, can you hear me now? I'm trying to.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Like you rightly said, it's a big one, and it's a bit complex. Number one, there are best practice standards in what we call vendor risk management. Number one, you are not, when you outsource a function, you are not outsourcing responsibility. So you're not going to come back to regulator and say, oh, you've outsourced this function, and then the vendor did not perform that function. You still take responsibility of that function. So if the vendor you've assigned the function to fail to, do the necessary returns or file the necessary returns or do what is needful, the sanction will not go to the vendor. The sanction comes to you. So you have to have that at the back of your mind. So when you outsource a critical function like AML function, you want to also monitor to ensure that this is actually perfected and it's done as at when due. That's the first one I was going to mention. Then secondly, the regulator also expect that you do all the necessary due diligence with the vendor before you outsource those functions to them, that they're actually capable to do it. You want to also check their antecedent to see what they've done in the past. All these should be part of the documentation before you outsource that function. But then I think by and large, there are certain things you can outsource. There are certain things you might not be able to outsource. I think the regulator are very, very clear about what the requirement is. So I believe whatever aspect of the function you are outsourcing, like I mentioned in the beginning, the responsibility still lies on the financial institution to ensure that the necessary returns are submitted as a when due. But then in risk management, you have the vendor risk management practices that there's best practice standard. You ensure all the processes I've mentioned. You want to do due diligence on the vendor. You want to ensure they have the capacity to perform this function. And then you also monitoring constantly to ensure that this has been done. I'm sure you will even be getting a report of whatever report have been submitted. You get a copy of it just for your filing to ensure that whenever the regulator comes, you have an evidence to present that this has been properly submitted. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Olai. Well, I think, as you were speaking, I was thinking about that, the point you made about responsibility, right? The fact that you have acquired a solution, it doesn't end there. You have to understand, what have I acquired? What is the regulation? And how do I ensure that within my organization, we are applying that technology to meet the regulation? Because this is a very key thing, because I've seen this where we were studying at the back end usage of the technology, and we found that certain people onboarded to probe, but they were not applying it fully to comply with the regulations. And what do I mean? They were probably just doing ID checks, no AML checks, no sanction screening, and then onboarding. When we saw that pattern, and not many organizations are going to be this dutiful with your compliance to come and tell you, you've paid, we've trained you. If you don't obey the regulations, that's not my business. But we've made it our business, because for us, we really care that if you've invested in our technology, you are able to, you are safe, you are sanction safe. So if you observe patterns, we communicate that backwards. So we had a session that ran 3 weeks where we were meeting with our customers to look, this is what is happening. You are not applying this technology fully as stated in the regulations, and your failure to do that will expose you. And I know when it happens, you're going to shout to your boss, but probe. And that's what he's saying. You are responsible. We cannot sit with you to check the IDs and make sure that you did a sanction screen or check if the person was a PEP. We cannot do that for you. What we can do is give you the tools to make that process very easy. But you have to have your own internal documentation. In fact, for some of our organizations, we give them documentation to say, okay, do this step by step if it's an individual. Do this step by step if it's an entity. If that's what you need. We went above and beyond what any provider would do to help guide the process so that you don't have the tech and then, because that's even more tragic. Imagine having the tool and then regulators show up and you didn't know how to use that tool to do the right thing, and then you're still in trouble. So that key point you raised, Mr. Ike, about responsibility is key. Understanding that it doesn't stop at buying the technology and I'm sanction free now. No, I'm hoping that one day we'll automate and use AI to the extent that you don't have to do anything. But I don't even know if you like that, because what that would mean essentially is we don't need you. So I think we're still at a place where we still need you as the compliance person to play a role. AI will do its own. The tech will do our own. We keep our eyes on the ground and our ears listening for new regulations and update our app to help you comply. But you still have a responsibility of knowledge and understanding. And that is why we have sessions like this as well, so that you can learn and understand your role, understand it beyond being afraid of a sanction. But really, why does it exist? Why do they want to give me this heavy fine for doing this? Understanding that is critical, and taking responsibility is critical. Thank you so much, Mr. Agi, for that contribution. Next, we have Mr. Obina Okafo. Are training and user accountability part of the regulatory expectations, or is this something that, is more like advised? Mr. Obina.
Yeah, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I don't know why my camera is not turning on. Okay, now the issue that has to do is they say repetition makes for emphasis. And by all the regulations and guidelines, it is mandatory to have a continuous training requirements. And now this continuous training requirement is expected, that is necessary, because from time to time there are changes, even if not changes in regulation, there are changes in pattern of crime, that new things that keep coming up. So to be able to keep track of that, a system must continuously train. In fact, by the regulation, an organization should have at least training for twice for each staff per annum. I think for the likes of, I'm speaking from the insurance space now, the likes of brokers and adjusters can be a minimum of one, but for others, insurance and reinsurance, a minimum of twice in a year. So what organizations do somehow is for on a quarterly basis to make sure that they cover all personnel. Most times they use external consultant like us. Sometimes they also use internal facilitators, but they also can have a system whereby these trainings can be, and in fact, it's one of the reporting requirements also to NAICOM to submit as to prove that you had this training and when due. There must be properly documented process to show that this thing was done. Apart from the signatures you had, sometimes they also take pictures in the course of the training to have. So you can't be printing out all those things. There must be a system where you can digitally compress them and submit to the regulator. So it's very, very critical that training is one. In fact, I had a session with somebody last week, Thursday. She was saying training had become monotonous. It depends on the person who is handling the training. If there are so many things happening on a daily basis that can occupy our trainings, very, very time on, really training issues that will help our businesses to ensure that. So the training is mandatory, and it has to be for everybody, not just for some people who are involved in the compliance section, all of that. So that is what it is. So also to assist in this, also the automation system can also integrate that to be able to compress all of that and be part of your reporting requirements. So training is part of the accountability requirement by the regulators, not just to fulfill righteousness, but to ensure that everybody is involved and know what to do. Because a system is as weak as its weakest link. That person who thinks that is not necessary might be the one that will be a loophole, or that particular weak link that which the organization can be sanctioned because of what they did not know about. That's what it is. So training is regular and must be continuously observed. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I see someone is asking for the material. I believe that the link to the recording will be shared. If you registered properly and follow that link to join, after the event, you'll get the link to watch the video after. Next question is for Mr. Olaiwola Ike. How do you currently detect structuring or smurfing? So these are more technical questions as we go along that speak to what I think audiences would want to hear. How do you currently detect structuring or smurfing in high volume transaction environments?
Okay, thank you. Now, I'd like to go in line of a monitoring tool, because like what everybody has been saying, the let me say the sophistication of anti-money laundering criminals are increasing by the day. You understand? So they are also advancing in their thinking, in the way they do things. I can't just be mentioning some very practical examples now because I'll be forced to be mentioning the names. But you can imagine the sophistication of people these days because of technology. Technology has made things very, very sophisticated. Do you understand? And that's why you need tools, because like somebody was saying, you can't, unless you have maybe an oracle, you can't possibly see everything. But then with technology and with AI, you can actually look at patterns. You can see the nature of transactions. You can see how these transactions are, the direction of the transaction, the nature of it, or what are the patterns of these transactions. So currently we use monitoring tool, like we say, so you monitor all your transactions. So you see the behavioral pattern of different transactions. And when that behavior change, you also get an alert. and then you investigate those alerts. You want to check properly to be sure this transaction is real. So that's one of the ways, and then is by using technology like Probe provided that we're able to monitor some of these transaction pattern, to monitor the nature of the transaction, the volume. You just, like I said, everything is just about, because it's machine learning, you already have a typical behavioral pattern, and if anything changes from that pattern, there could be any reason why the pattern is changing, but then the system throws it up, and then you investigate, and from that investigation you'll be able to establish the fact that, oh, this is a structuring, this is totally different from the normal, and then you take the next steps by reporting such incident, and then maybe try to even let me say offboard or remove whoever is culpable for that particular incident from your system or from your platform. But the thing I would say here is that, just in line with what everybody have been talking about, the nature of our transactions are changing, the volumes are increasing, people are becoming sophisticated, everything is becoming technologically driven. Even the criminals are also aware of this, so they are also testing the system to see how they could really scale through with their intentions. So the best form is also for organizations to increase their level of awareness to these patterns, and then this level of technical involvement in doing all these transactions, and then be able to quickly identify when these things are changing. And as human being, like we said, I remember in the bank, you have compliance officer in every branch, and then they are monitoring all the transactions, they are reviewing it. But you can't do that again, because that has become very outdated now. You have to rely on technology to be able to look through all your transactions and be able to spot anomaly in the nature of those transactions, and quickly pick it up and do your due diligence on those unusual transactions, and then you get your finding, and based on your finding, you'll be able to take the necessary steps to address those incidents.
All right, thank you so much. That's really helpful. I think, in summary, we're pointing to the need for technology. We're pointing to the need for a transaction monitoring tool, because in a high volume environment, like I said, you give me that kind of job, I will run away. It's just impossible. It's just impossible. I don't care how much you want to pay. You are asking for my entire lifetime plus more. It's just not possible. There will be errors, there will be mistakes, and it will actually cost you more when you think about the number of people that you need to be able to monitor all of those transactions in real time and catch something like structuring and smurfing. Going to be really tough, really tough. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, so over to you, Salu. Can I see the next slide, please? Okay. This question is for Mr. Midayo Ogunfowoke. How do you verify the identity of a walk-in or digitally onboarded customer within 3 minutes or less?
Okay. Thank you, Oluwatosin, for this question. So for us in the insurance industry, prior to now, we usually rely on the financial industry, like the bank, to do most of these things for us, and just tell, oh, customer, just please give us your identity number, and we just transfer. For us as a broker, we just transfer to the insurance. But now the story is changing. Is now like saying, as a broker, you need to verify your customer identity. You need to be able to have a normal database that can capture customers' risk. So what we do is, in less than 3 minutes, because we have bulky transactions as a firm. Imagine a company is trying to do, let's say, fidelity guarantee for their customers. So you are bringing in for their staff, and you're bringing in like 200 transactions at the moment. So what we do is, immediately they are coming in with their transactions, we use our our probe compliance. That's what we use in my own company to verify our customer in less than 3 minutes. So we ensure that their NIN, because the problem we have in the insurance sector is customers are not ready to give you their BBN. They tell you, I'm giving it to the bank, and bank told me that I should not share my BBN with anybody. Also, thank God for NIN verification. So what we just do is collect their NIN and log it on our probe compliance platform to be able to verify customer identity. Because when NAICOM came for their last supervisory, they asked us that, how do you verify your customer identity? How do you verify whether they are high risk, especially PEP? Because prior to now, we don't have PEP. We say no PEP, no PEP. Say, no, you must have PEP. And thanks to probe compliance, we're able to dictate at least some PEPs in our books to say, oh, we're able to identify this PEP using probe compliance. Their API helped us to check sanction lists and PEP. So we are even very happy, like, okay, when NAICOM comes next, this is how our hand will be. We have done it. This is what we are using. So we're able to verify it. And that's really helped us in our onboarding turnaround time to be very, very fast. Thank you.
All right, that's wonderful. All right, thank you so much for that contribution. I don't know if I think a few seconds to behave, but thank you so much for that contribution. With the use of technology, you can do it yourself now, which is great, and you have evidence to show that these checks have been done. Yeah, evidence that these checks have been done when the regulators come. So it's boosting your confidence. I can do it myself. I can do it in good time, and I'm able to show evidence that I have done it when regulators visit. Those are the benefits of having, such technology. Next, we have in submitting STRs and CTRs due to formatting or approval bottlenecks. Have you ever experienced delays in submitting STRs and CTRs due to formatting or approval bottlenecks? Mr. Olaiwola, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I didn't even know you were directing that at me. Okay, so when you say approval bottleneck, you don't need approval to submit STR. That's why it's been automated. STR is STR. What constitutes an STR comes under the normal transaction setting. You will have set what an STR is. This is suspicious transaction. Like I mentioned earlier on, there is a behavioral pattern for your transaction. For instance, let me use a typical example. If you're doing a transaction, maybe for a merchant that sells electronic gadgets, or let me say phone, let's just say phone, and then you process payment for phones. The highest amount a phone can cost, maybe let's even say 2 million, or okay, let's give 5 million as a cost of a single phone, or maybe then that particular client or customer suddenly make a transfer or make a payment of, let's say, in the region of 500 million, and then you see the purchase description telling you this is a purchase of a phone, that's automatically a suspicious transaction. So when you're one addressing that is that when you're filing a suspicious transaction, there's no approval. Once it is established, this is a suspicious transaction. It is a suspicious transaction. You don't, which is why what I said in the beginning, why even regulators are automating the monitoring, because it will no longer be at the discretion of an organization to decide whether I want to submit or you want to file a transaction as suspicious or not, because the regulators themselves will now have a view. So it will just be best in your interest to know that you are monitoring using a very proactive tool to monitor what the nature of your transaction is, Just because you've done the KYC, you've done the KYB, you understand that business, you understand that customer, and you know the nature or the pattern of transaction. So any transaction that falls out of that behavioral pattern becomes suspicious. Yes, there might be a legit reason, but then you do your due diligence, you do your investigation, and once you establish it as a suspicious transaction, you report immediately. And like I said, it's automated. Maybe you will have set the rule on the system, and then the system also reports it. So I don't think there's that approval, because even your initial transaction setting, all your AML, everything will have been approved by your management and your board, depending on how your internal process is. But I believe once a transaction is tagged suspicious, you report as soon as possible, because you don't want to be, because like we mentioned earlier on, regulators are also stepping up in their monitoring, and I'm sure that these things will now come with timing. That when did you notice, when did you report? So you don't also want to be delaying in reporting such transactions. Yeah. So there's no issue for bottleneck here. Once it's suspicious, you report immediately.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Olaiwola. I think when it comes to this question, I have some first-hand experience with some of our customers who experienced challenges with formatting. So there was no approval issue, but then having difficulty getting the right format. So they would upload and it's rejected by the GoML platform. And what we then did for those customers was we built in like the schema into the onboarding side of our application that allows you to generate that if you're doing it manually. But if you're using the transaction monitoring tool, we just generate the right format for you, so that you click a button, you get the documents in the right format and upload. And we're even looking now, like you said, to integrate with the NFIU's platform, so that directly from our platform, it just goes. That's the next step. NFIU doesn't currently provide that, but it's something that is coming soon, and we are working very closely with them to implement as soon as it's ready. But yes, there were a number of people who complained. Back to Madam Timidayo, what do you do when your compliance team is unsure whether to escalate a transaction for investigation or not? What do you do? Like, you can speak practically or just in an advisory capacity.
Okay, thank you. So as the compliance officer, I tell my colleagues and co-team members that you can't assume that everybody is your customer. Everybody that send you money, that they want to buy insurance, you can't say, oh, because a mind of a marketer is I want to make money, increase the company revenue. I'm from the side of, okay, yes, we want to make money, but it's not every money that is your money, right? It's not every customer that is your customer. So number one thing I do tell them is I first of all training, red flags, that when a transaction is like this, when you are not sure of who the customer is or the name of the customer, or you're not even familiar, is not traceable, you need to escalate. And also, we also have this thing we call the refund premium, where a customer is saying, oh, either by mistake or by or double transaction, you need to report. We say, okay, I want to collect my money back. So these are triggers that we've set in place in our system, that once a customer is asking for so money, so it goes through a lot of investigation that you cannot, it's already in place. It's like it's part of our workflow. You cannot give back a customer their premium or what they paid without engaging the compliance team to check whether the person is genuinely made mistake or the person is trying to do money laundering. You're trying to clean your whitewash the money from the source. So what we do is I train every staff and team members, and we also put triggers in place using our probe compliance to say, okay, this risk profiling, this customer is high risk. So no matter the money that comes, even if it's 5,000, please let us know, because we need to properly put in check this customer. And of course, we create an open door policy whereby if you are not sure, you can always walk up to the compliance team to ask questions on, oh, okay, this customer paid this money, especially if the money is in foreign currency, and it's not coming from Nigeria. We really have to be very careful of those kind of transactions to be sure that we are doing the right thing. So what we do mostly is to set triggers in our compliance in our software to ensure that everything is going on very well in accordance to regulatory requirements.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that contribution. I hope everyone can hear me well. I really love the practical examples that you're giving. For instance, how refund premium is a new way that launderers, or one of the ways that launderers are one of the new methods. And I think that it's such a tough job because you can catch one method and they come up with another one. And then you catch something and they come up with the next one. So your job is never really done. But I like how you are adopting training, like you have said, and creating open door policies for people to step up and say, this is not what in the list of things that you said we should look out for. It's not a rule on our transaction monitoring tool, but I'm suspicious. I think having such policies within the compliance teams is helpful because, like I said, as we're talking, to be honest, I was like, I hope there's no laundry on this call. Trying to figure out what we are discussing here and bypass it, right? But yeah, it's a really, really tough, and I like that you're thinking about, okay, so this is another for you. Yeah, you're laughing, but it's true. Someone can be here intentionally listening to us. Oh, that's the new technology, right? I want to sign up and figure it out and then bypass it. Truly, if you think about it and you are a launderer, you would want to attend a session like this. Just look to your left and right in case you see any suspicious human being and report them. People with funny names on this call. Please, no, I'm serious.
Tosin, just to address what you're saying, and that's why we're saying you own the responsibility as the one using the tool. You also will need to continually rejig your rules on the tool. So once you notice some behavior, because like I said, these guys are also advancing in their approach. And then once you notice a different behavior, a different style that they are now adopting, then you also adapt your monitoring, the way you monitor and what you monitor for and what your triggers are. You constantly change it. You just don't want to relax and say, oh, like you rightly said initially, oh, I've gotten the tool, let me just relax, and the tool will be doing it. No, you are the one that will be setting what the tool should be monitoring in the system, and then you are ensuring that you are properly monitoring them, and then you're detecting in a timely manner what you're supposed to be detecting. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. I think this is some question you've kind of answered it in the previous question, but I'll ask again just in case you want to add another layer. How do you ensure junior analysts don't miss red flags during manual reviews?
Well, like I said earlier, doing things manually can be a whole lot of work, especially for the compliance team. You are trying to manage, this is not millions, you are managing trillions, sometimes billions. And so during manual reviews, what I tell junior analysts is we have automation. Also, there's guided workflow. You know your process, you know what to do. So when it gets to a particular table, they know when to reject. Like for us, there's a workflow that there's an amount of money that even when you want to process an insurance, you must go and ask the finance team. The CFO need to be aware. The MD need to be aware that, oh, so money came in. Like one day I was just doing the manual review and I saw up to like more than 1 billion. I just started screaming everywhere. They say, hey, this woman has started again. Who is expecting money for so customer? And without a name, but we found out that, oh, it's one of our subsidiary that sent in that money, So there's a threshold to say once a customer, no matter the customer business, depending on their business, we profile them, risk profiling. There's a threshold we set that once this customer is paying more than this, please let us know. This is a red flag. You need to tell us why you are paying more than the amount. For example, if I say your policy is $10,000 and you now send me $100,000 and you said it's a mistake. Do you understand? That's what they do. That's what they do. It's a mistake. Send us back. So the things we put in place is, you will send me that account number where that money is coming from. You get a letter from your MD, and people are like, no, why is it tough? Why is it? No, we are trying to ensure that we are doing the global best practice. It's a red flag to me, whether it's a mistake or not. Everybody's bound to mistake, but to me as a compliance person, it's a red flag that you made mistake of sending 10,000. Now you're not asking me to send $90,000 back to you from another account, not from the source account. Is a big red flag to us. So I ensure that junior analysts, they don't miss this type of red flags when we are doing our manual review. I do quarterly, monthly, even weekly. Our accounts, we check it every day to see the amount of money that comes into both our Naira, our domiciliary accounts, and ensure that if there's any new customer or old customer, we profile them into probe compliance, trade up. Please help us check for high risk, low risk, and medium risk customer. So from there, we'll know how to monitor their transaction daily, monthly, or weekly. Because some customers pay insurance monthly. Some pay weekly, they pay every week that, okay, this insurance. So we have to be on our toes. And of course, we are expanding in the insurance space now. Insurance is not like 10 years ago. People are now aware. People now want to do more of insurance. And so we're having big transactions and numbers of transactions. So we need to ensure that we are doing these things rightly to avoid red flags.
Thank you so much, so very much. There's a lot packed into that response on very practical basis, and we intentionally are asking questions that are practical because we know that a lot of people here are thinking about what they do in their day-to-day work. How does this AML guideline from the CBN affect that or connect into that? So it looks like we are now, I'm sure you're all very happy. I'm very sure the audience is happy, but it's now your turn to ask questions. We come to the Q&A segment. Like has been mentioned, we will not let you unmute your microphones. We're going to be reading the questions that you have shared in the chat or the Q&A space. For those who couldn't access the Q&A space, those are in the chat. So someone on the team will guide me. Before we go into that, I want us to just give a big round of applause to our panelists. If you have enjoyed this session, I want to see a big round of applause. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel like I've learned so much in a very practical sense, listening to players in the payment services space, in the insurance space, in the commercial bank space, in the consulting space. You've shared so much that makes it come home, brings it close to home on what exactly is all of this fuss about. What is this secular? What is this AML? Why are they disturbing us? Because there are real issues. And we've talked about the real issues and the real challenges and how our financial ecosystem needs to be clean enough to get us better international ratings like the FATF listing, get us out of the gray list. It is the application of technology like this that makes it easier or more likely that Nigeria, for instance, gets out of the FATF gray list. The Nigerian financial ecosystem looks more attractive to foreign investors and they're able to come in. So that is the role. If you think about it from that perspective, that Nigerian payments are accepted globally. These are some of the things that prevent us from playing in certain places financially because they say our systems are not trustworthy. We're not checking. Criminals are running amok. They're getting away with what they're doing. There's no opportunity for repatriation. I was studying the FATF gray listing, the reasons for it, how those countries that recently came out of it did so, how the ones that haven't, the reasons that were listed. And among them, you can find applications for technology to help facilitate those things that would get us out of there. Of course, there are some things in that gray list that not necessarily tied to the use of AML technology per se, but many of them are. And the more that we adopt, the more likely that we are to, get to the place where we have a trustworthy financial system that is safe. That's really the goal, if you ask me. All right, so now down to Q&A. I'm going to need some support from someone on my team to show me where to go and how to go about the questions now. I've clicked the Q&A space. I don't know if we just start from the one that is on top. Okay, I think we should. I'm going to flip it over. Recent post, most upvoted. Recent activity. How do I put it in the order that they came? Because I'm seeing just now. I want
All
to
right.
see.
So see, if you scroll
Okay.
down to the last one is the first question. So if you scroll down,
Okay.
the first person is Olalekan, and I don't know
You
if
want
you
to
see
read
that.
it?
So you go ahead and read it, and you take it up from there.
Yes, please, because I'm still trying to navigate my way to the bottom.
Okay. So Olalekan asks, does filing of NIL reports or new reports suffice for STRs and CTRs reports when there are no transactions to report?
I think what I'm going to try to do with this Q&A, I'm not going to try to answer them myself. I will just pass them around the table. If you have your hand up, we're not going to unmute your microphone. There's no need to have your hand up. Go to Q&A or go to chat and put your question there. We're not unmuting microphones for the attendees, please. Just go to the Q&A. Thank you. So does filing of NIL reports suffice for STRs and CTR reports when there are no transactions to report? Let me give this to Mr. Akinola to take.
Yes, thank you, Tosin. Can I confirm that you can see my screen as well? The screen that's been shared or not?
Yes.
Yes, so new reports are obviously fundamental to our systems. On the screen that's been shared is our probe core system. I know this is not a demo, but just to quickly show to answer some of these questions. New reports are built into our reporting for both transaction monitoring and on our core system. There's simply a report section you can go, depending on the industry or the report you're looking to file. If it's the STR reports, you can kind of see them there straight away. If it's the NAICOM report, you can see the NAICOM report standards. You can see the SEC report standards, all built in for your convenience. The new reports are obviously built in. You can go into the system, generate the reports, and send the new report. So yes, it's fundamental to our systems, both on the transaction monitoring platform and on our core system. Next question, Tosin.
Thank you so much for that answer, and I hope the person has gotten the answer. So yes, if there's nothing suspicious, then you submit your new report, and that's because the regulator just wants to make sure that you are checking and you are finding nothing. That's why you need to submit the new report. It's just a way of saying, check in, I didn't see anything suspicious today, or anything that meets the criteria that requires reporting. So this is a blank report. So I think the short answer would be yes to you, Olalekan. The next question I see is from Joy Sulu Canaan. I hope I got it correct. The regulator's expectations, apart from automation and filtering, are there any other expectations? Well, I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that this webinar focuses on AML technology regulations, but there are many other regulations. It's just that the scope of today's conversation is what have the regulators across all the sectors said about technology for AML, but there are certainly other regulations that speak to other things that are not, like I said, within the scope. So there are others. I think if I can find any material from some of our blog posts that can guide you, we'll put that in the chat. But yes, there are other regulations that we cannot. I don't know if any of the speakers wants to just do a quick summary of other broad regulations. Maybe Mr. Olaiwola, I don't know. Can you just help her with a summary? I know there are a lot, but a summary of broadly speaking regulations outside of automating your compliance process. You're on mute.
Okay, sorry. All right, so I was saying that I'm not going to attempt to summarize all the regulations, really, because as a compliance officer, what you need to even be scanning for constantly are the new regulations or any regulations that come out. What we're talking about, what the tool has been able to do was to even bring together in a space all necessary regulations so that you can meet those regulations, like filing your STR, doing your AML background check, the EDD, CDD, all those necessary things that you're supposed to do in the compliance space is brought together under the umbrella of the platform or the system that is automated. So what you do manually, like trying to do your KYC, verifying ID manually, and visiting addresses, all these things now have a way of being done automatically. So that's what the emphasis on. But then, like we said, the system will not go and be checking for the new regulations for you. As a compliance officer, you are the one that will be constantly going to the regulator to see what are the new things that they are coming up with. But now the focus is on automation of the AML platform. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Olaiwola, for that. And I think what I can say is many times I'll applaud the CBN. They did a good job circulating their draft baseline standards to the institutions. And I think it's just making sure you have an open channel in your own organization between you and the regulators, so that when they want to communicate, because they will, you receive it and can have internal sessions to review those regulations.
Exactly.
We have a question from Sonny Oladimeji. Please advise on AML, CFT, CPF compliance software suitable for general insurance business operations. I think Madam Temidayo has already advised, but I think I can let her take this again. He wants your advice that what is the suitable compliance software for general insurance business. Madam Temidayo, it's over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Okay, so for us at First Insurance Brokers, we are using probe compliance, which makes it very easy for us. In fact, to make it very interesting, you can incorporate your API into your own core system where you process your insurance, where you do your credit notes and debit notes, just to ensure that you are doing the right thing. So it will help you, because insurance is you have a lot of transaction. It's not like banking system where you have a lot of transaction. So at a glance, you can upload your customers' information and see their profiling to ensure that you're having a seamless KYC CDD. And another thing for, I think, insurance industry, we are just coming up. If there is an handshake between the underwriter and the broker, if the broker have done the proper onboarding CDD, you can always collect. So, for example, we can tell our underwriters that, oh, this customer that we are sending the credit note to you, he or she has been onboarded. This is the risk profiling. Continue to do more monitoring, or we give them reports if needed, if they ask. So to make it very seamless. But I know that as time goes on, with this new CBN baseline, in the next 1 year, 2 years, everybody will have an handshake, both with the bank, insurance, and all financial institutions. There will be one single, at a glance, where we can see our customer that, oh, this customer is risky, this one is not risky. And I hope that we'll get there as soon as possible. Thank you.
Very true. Very true.
Thank
Let
you.
me just
Thank you
add
so
to that,
much.
Tosin.
Okay.
Let me just add to what Temidayo said, because she has touched on something very important, and that's cross-industry screening of measures. So because eventually you will discover that at the end of the day, it's still the same customer that is patronizing insurance, that is also patronizing bank, because they are interrelated. Yes. They are also the ones in payment. So it's just like it cut across financial services. So there's going to, which is where they are going to. So any organization, thank God we're even talking about it, any organization that is futuristic or that is looking at the future should know that you need to get a system that can cut across your different touch points in your different processes. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be a central monitoring where there will be risk profile, just like what they did for what's it called now, credit, that you now have to do credit check on people that have holes. So you will know at a glance, you know, okay, this is this person's insurance history. This is the banking record. This is, the different financial services. They will have it. And then you'll be able to just, from one point, have a view of what the customer is or what the organization is like. I think we're getting there with all this integration.
Yes, I think I really love the idea of the concept of a centralized risk profile repository that all financial players can access. I think everyone would appreciate that very much. Of course, on top of that, you will still need to do your own internal things. but it's helpful to see a customer and be able to get that. And I think that is where we are heading. If you look at what Probe is able to do during your onboarding, it gives you a
Yes.
medium, low, high risk, right? But then we can have it at a
Yes.
higher level, right? We can have it at a more detailed level, taking into account even more data, sets of data to classify that customer. So yeah, I think it's really
So to
interesting.
add to that, sorry, please. That's why this new baseline from CBN is saying either BVN or NIN. It's generic now. It's either you have BVN or NIN. That is what we should use on our AML technology, because they know that if your BVN is blacklisted by CBN, we will see it at a glance. If your NIN has been blacklisted, we'll see it at a glance. So I think we'll get there as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was a really good question. The next one I'm taking is from. Okay, it's Michael Onovo is saying, is there any application that we can introduce to enable my institution file its STR automatically? Who do I give that to?
I'm happy to take that question, Tosin. Yes, technically, just speaking of filing to the NFIU, I'm very, very glad to say that we're in very close contact with a lot of parties from the NFIU, very, very high up. At the moment, the NFIU do not take automatic filings. It's very political from them, because obviously what the fear is that when you send the data, there can be a lot of corruption, and you can send viruses and it can actually crash the system. So you can imagine from a criminal perspective where criminals know that STRs are being filed automatically, they can try as best to corrupt that system. And if that system is then corrupted, then it just ruins the whole reporting process. That's why they've gone via the Go AML platform. The Go AML platform is actually used by over 60 countries globally. And that's why it has these stop gaps you register. Notwithstanding, from recent conversations that we've had with them, they are looking to have a system that you can only push certain bits of information that's already been screened and verified. So what we are doing as a company is at the forefront saying, look, once that process starts, please consider us. Because what we want to do for our customers is when you go to generate a report either on our transaction monitoring platform, which I'm showing, or you generate a report on the core system, the report goes straight through. So all you do is literally select let's say I'm doing a SAR, a Go AML SAR. This is the format. Once I go down, there'll be a submit button here. I submit the report and it goes straight to the platform and gives you a receipt of that you've sent it to it's been delivered, all of that stuff. Other reporting requirements like I believe it's the SEC reports, a little bit more simpler in the sense that it generates an email and you can actually download and send the email straight from the platform. So what we're trying to do, unfortunately, as you've said, it's not currently possible, but it will be hopefully possible in the future. And that's more from the NFIU side.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much. I think one thing that was coming to mind as we were talking about this is NFIU being like the one to lead that sort of movement. If your question includes a brand name, I will not be reading it out. Just so you know, I can see a question like that. As you know, we haven't been paid to promote any brands outside of ours. So I'm going to skip that. I can see a question. I'm sorry. I can't read that. I have a question from Joseph Benga. What is the best method for proper KYC verification during onboarding, incorporating KYC to account opening or verifying and proceeding to onboarding? Let me read that again. What is the best method for proper KYC verification during onboarding? The person puts into brackets, incorporating KYC to account opening or verifying and proceeding to onboarding.
Again, I'm more than happy to take that. I think the best onboarding regime, what I will call it, has to be as comprehensive as possible. What we usually advise is you have to look at your organization statement of risk appetite. It's best to be as holistic as possible. What do I mean? If I'm onboarding a business, have I done checks to see that that business is properly registered? Who are the ultimate beneficial owners of that business? What is the nature of business of that actual business? what industries do they operate in? All of these things are essential to making sure that you meet the compliance requirements. So that's why, as you can see from the screen that I'm sharing, not only do we ensure that there are various types of identification criteria we meet for individuals, but certainly for businesses, and then full or more comprehensive AML searches. So what I would advise is, before you onboard an individual, are you sure that that individual is not listed, for example, on the Nigerian sanctions, and on the NICOM list, which is the top Nigerian sanctions list? Is that individual wanted by Interpol, international police, both globally? Is that individual listed on OFSI, OFAC, UN, UKHMT? Those are the 4 core standard international bodies. Because essentially, if you're like the lady mentioned, if you're dealing in the US dollar and somebody is listed by OFAC, even if it is $1, if you transact in that dollar transaction, you're in breach of OFAC, and they can obviously then have sanctions, high extraditions. It can get very, very complicated. So ensuring that you have a system that covers as much as you can cover, both from an identification standpoint, and then have a system that covers the sanctions and the ongoing due diligence. What a lot of companies fail, from what we've identified as Provis, or I've identified the customer, I checked their, let me go from my list, I checked their driving license, I checked their international passport, I even checked the voter's card, I checked all of this, so they are fine. What a lot of organizations don't understand is the ongoing due diligence is actually more important than the initial due diligence process. The initial due diligence, you can take, let me use myself as an example. I come to First Bank and I give them my NIN, BV, and even my passport is verified. But then tomorrow or next week, I'm involved in money laundering and my details are wanted globally or internationally. If you don't have an ongoing due diligence process where you're constantly screening your customers, looking for new adverse media or sanctions concerns, you could fall by the wayside. So this is what these systems also do. We don't just encourage the initial onboarding, we encourage an ongoing due diligence regime. I think that potentially would help solve any sort of compliance related concerns or issues. Thank you.
No, I thank you so much for that. I have a really good question here from Ndidi. Ndidi, if you're here, we're going to take your question. So my question is on PEP. How do we identify a PEP, especially if he or she was not one before onboarding?
So see, let me add, because it has actually been addressed with what was just said now. That's basically ongoing due diligence, but I'm just going to address 1 or 2 things because I think I need to excuse myself very shortly. Okay, so this has been addressed, but just to add to it, is an ongoing monitoring. You don't, like we said earlier on, you don't just do the initial onboarding or initial screening and relax. It has to be continuous because rules are always changing and your customers are always changing. That's why they are very serious on the KYC and KYB. You need to constantly know the nature of your customer's business and then their identity. Very, very important. So you might have a rule as an organization. How often do you need to review your customer base to understand their current identity? When I was in the bank, there are people that open their account as a copper, but their identity have changed after how long? So you need to constantly know how to screen your clients so that you understand that you are still current about their identity. That's why sometimes banks will tell you, come and update your record, come and update. If any of your detail is changing, come update on your system. And like you rightly said, if the person has transitioned from being an ordinary person to now a PEP, so that's part of what you need to do as a compliance officer, to constantly review your database and be sure they are still up to date and they're current. That's what I'll say about that. And there's someone that asked about integration, that, okay, is it not, are they not going to use that as fraud? If you're integrating with the core banking and things like that, then I'm going to add that with, there's another person that asked in integration that the security, how safe is that integration, or what level of integration will be required? So let's address this. When you're integrating, there are rules, there are requirements. You have requirement sharing. There are things that will be required from organization, and there are things that will be required from the vendor you're using, just like Probe. Those requirements will follow a particular standard. Those are, vendor client relationship standard. There are minimum rules you must fulfill before you do integration, and there are security around that. There's data protection. I saw a comment by one of the staff of Probe that we are regulated by NDPR, so there's a data protection involved in integration. So you don't just integrate just a random vendor, which is why you need to understand the kind of vendor you're integrating with, someone that has been in the industry, that have done this with different companies in the industry. You want to be sure the people you are integrating with are verified, and they all have the appropriate licenses to do what they are doing. So those are things you want to ensure. And then when it comes to the integration, even with the banks, this is a regulatory requirement. The regulators want you to be to automate, so you have no choice. And because it's coming from the regulator, there will be allowances. Banks also will be, because the project I said I was involved with the CB, and that's part of the requirement, because they know that banks will have to be sharing information, and this information are private information. There's an oath of secrecy. You are not supposed to be sharing customers' data, but because we're doing this, it's driven by the regulator, there will be rules around it. There are standards, there are principles around it that will allow banks to share the API, and then the vendors also will integrate into that platform to be able to understand that. So there are security features that have been designed to take care of all these concerns, which will make it seamless when people are integrating. All right. Thank you. So I think
thank you so
we'll
much,
take it up
Mr.
from there,
Olaiwola.
Tosin.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Olaiwola. Let's just move on to the next very quickly. Someone here is asking Mr. Akinola, does probe compliance equate the risk of AML, CFT, CPF in insurance to that of the capital market exposure?
Yes, a good question. Most definitely, risk is risk. Ultimately, it depends ultimately on two key factors. One is the profile of the client, and two, the product and service that they require. For example, a politically exposed person, the potential risk of dealing with a politically exposed person is virtually the same either in banking, insurance, commercial banking, because you can see that potentially the movement of state funds could be used either by insurance, commercial banks, retail banks, or the likes. Secondly, from a sanctions perspective, depending on the nature of business that you're dealing with, or the actual client. If the client is, for example, wanted, Interpol, EFCC, NDLEA, if you read the Proceeds of Crime Act 2022, it shows what proceeds of crime can actually be classed as. So once a person is wanted or actually being found wanting from a money laundering perspective, then you don't want your organization to be involved in the movement of those funds, because those funds essentially would be classed as proceeds of crime, and then they would obviously require confiscation. And if it's international, it even gets worse in terms of obviously the prohibition. So to answer the question, yes, risk ultimately is risk. Would you want to say, oh, we onboarded a former terrorist? I mean, it doesn't even sound nice, whatever way you want to put it. We onboarded a wanted person. The risk form different categories. There's financial crime risks, there are fraud risks, there are reputational risks. There are some people that don't have financial crime implications, but reputationally don't them in your organization because of what they potentially stand for. So these are these factors, and the good news is where we've calibrated the system is that we do searches live based on live information. And I can gladly say on this forum that your World Check, your Thomson Reuters don't do it as far as live information. What do I mean by live? If I put my name on the system or any name on the system, it also checks open source. Open source is everything that's available on the web. And then we use AI to get an AI profile on the individual as well. Because you can say, well, I'm not on OFAC, I'm not on OFSI, I'm not on NIGHTSAC. But if this person is a local champion or a criminal in a remote area, once that information is available online or open source, it checks all those sources and returns them. essentially. So I would always say, from a compliance perspective, risk is risk, and you're ensuring that even if it's a reputational issue, that it's addressed and it's signed off before you proceed, because you never really know the far-reaching implications of that risk. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I think before we go ahead, I want to just appeal to our panelists to keep the answers as short as possible so we can go through as many of the questions that have been shared. And then for those who have shared questions, where it's just a comment, I may skip it because we want to go through actual questions. So don't be offended if I don't mention yours. Someone has asked here. Okay, someone is asking, I want to appreciate the moderators for their beautiful presentation. Please, this is Shola Ajayi. In the area of PEP, how would automation solve problem of PEP in a country where there is no strong, good database? Don't you think there will be mistaken identity in the process? Thank you.
Fantastic question. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. This is one of the problems we've identified at Probe, and what we've done as a specific organization is we have our own in-house PEP database. All our PEP records have an image of the PEP, full name of the PEP, the positions they hold, when they started, when they ended, and then we check open source as an example. So I'll very quickly see if I can find a PEP that was searched recently and show you that profile. These profiles are unique to us because, again, you can have 10 Ibrahim Mohammeds. You can have, so how do you then identify if this person is the PEP or not? The image of the PEP, the profile of the PEP is then essential. So I'll quickly check through to see if I can find, okay, I think Peter Odili, for example, is a PEP, right? I think he is a PEP. If we go to our own in-house PEP database, you'll find that when I open the PEP database, you can see that we have Peter Odili Jr., who in this case is a relative and close associate of the actual PEP. You can see the PEP Peter Odili's image there. You can see other linked relatives and close associates. And each of these individuals then has a profile on our system where you can see the full profile, the full history. That's how we choose to sort of, I guess, fight that potential issue. So here we have 3 hits. That's Peter Odili Jr. This is Peter Odili himself. You can see the full image of the PEP. We create a profile. We give it the date of birth. So you can discount via image. You can discount via date of birth. That's one standard. You can then look at the actual political exposed person's profile and then see, okay, he was deputy governor, then governor, I think. Those are the 2 positions. You can see the dates on there. And you can see all the known...
Sorry, Mr. Aki, can you stop sharing and share again? Some of the users can't see your screen. Stop sharing and sharing again.
Okay, maybe before he comes back with that, I can talk about, there's a question here that I will take because I know who is asking. They're an existing customer using one of the applications, but not the other. It's Obioha from Nigadi MFB. How do you conduct transaction monitoring when the probe is not connected directly to the CBA of the financial institution? I will say connect it, because while it is possible to conduct transaction monitoring by downloading the data from your core banking app and uploading it to our transaction monitoring tool, you're better off connecting it. Unless there's something, maybe you don't have a CBA or there's something I don't know. Why wouldn't you connect it? You're giving yourself another layer of work to download and upload. But in the case where it's not possible to connect, the option you have is to download the transactions and then upload them to your transaction monitoring tool with a particular cadence. So you can agree if it's something you want to do daily, twice a day, every 2 days, whatever frequency fits your own risk appetite as an organization, you do that. I don't know, when Mr. Kiona is ready, please let me know. I have a question from Samson Olaniyi. It says, what level of automation is permitted or encouraged in the decision-making process for AML alerts and SARs or STRs? What level of automation is permitted? I think that's a quite rather here and there question. I don't know if I don't see any panelists anymore. Can anyone hear me? Salut, Do you hear me?
Yes, I'm
Yes,
here.
Okay,
clearly.
good. Yeah, I wanted to make
Yes,
sure.
can you hear
Okay,
you?
so can I answer the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, if you want to know the level of AML CFT technology function, firstly is who is your regulator and what is your regulator saying? So you look at it from the side of the regulator, then you look at it from the side of your processes. So when you don't know your process and who your regulator is and what it has said, then you will now be able to choose. You can always contact Probe Compliance to know, because they always have everything in stock for you. The one for small business, large business, no matter your processes, they're always there to help you streamline and know when to fit in. So, but firstly is who is your regulator and what is your regulator saying about the AML CFT technology and the do's and don'ts. And of course, don't forget data protection, very key, because those ones now they are hunting. I don't want to call it hunting. They are on the lookout for any small gap. They are in your faces. So you want to go with the software that is NDPR compliant, like Pro, to ensure that you are doing what is right. Thank you.
I think this other question, I'm going to read this question, but you've already answered it. So, but just for Jafar Fast's sake, will this outsourcing not expose the financial institution to higher third-party risk as regard exposure and fraud? And she has answered, get a solution that is at least NDPR compliant, where we know that your data will not be manhandled or misused. And that should take care of that. Next, we have when onboarding a business account on a digital platform, are references required? This is not really relevant to the conversation, but even I that is not in the space, if you're going to open a corporate account, they will ask you for references. I think it's mandatory, but it's not quite on topic here, so I'm not passing that on to a panelist. So that was from Ezekiel. Yes, that's not the topic of the day, but I believe that in my own experience trying to open a corporate account, I've always been asked for references. Can NIN serve as a substitute for BVN in identity verification, particularly the insurance sector, given the 2022 NAICOM AML CFT CPF BVN requirements? That's from James. Can NIN serve as a substitute for BVN in identity verification, particularly in the insurance sector, given the NICOM 2022 BVN requirements? So either Mr. Ubina or...
Yeah, Mr. Ubina.
Okay, I can take it up. What happened is that, the challenge have always been because people have been advised not to release their BVN, so that challenge will remain there. But with the level integration that is going on, for which also Probe Compliance provides, it's a simple and seamless approach for you. Just provide the NIM, they can connect the BVN for you by verifying who the issue. And that's one of the reasons why the issue of automation become more handy. That's where you have challenges. The law requires that if you have need, you have to use any other means to be able to get your verification as much as possible. So if you're able to get your NIM, and the client is comfortable to release that their BVN to you, you can still go ahead and subject it to the Probe Compliance, to the screening tool that will be able to use that same identity verification to connect to everything that has to do with that client. That's what I will answer to that effect.
Thank you very much. So that's really helpful. I'm sorry, because there are many questions. If your question is not relevant to the conversation, I may not take it. Is there any implication from Sunday Ayomide Ajayi? Is there any implication when regulators detect fraud before a bank or insurance company does? Who wants to take that?
I'll take that. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Just speaking from my experience working within banks, if the regulator identifies the fraud before you identify it, then there's obviously potential penalties or even up to a loss of license. So you shouldn't be in a position where a regulator is, depending on the extent, obviously, of the fraud and the implications. But what you want to do is at least have systems that are robust enough manual, otherwise, whatever systems you want to incorporate, just ensure that the regulators are not the ones identifying fraud and identifying sort of financial crime concerns, because then that's an open door for them to fine and seize your license, very simply.
All right, thank you very much for that very brief answer. Someone says, Oluwashun Fashiku says, how do you treat false positives? Can someone else on the panel answer that? How do you treat false positives? Maybe you can speak from the solution that you have and how you handle it. Let me answer that quickly because we don't have time. I can speak about probe. On probe, there's an opportunity for you when the report is generated to mark the result as a false positive. So if the result you've obtained is not a match as you would like, you can simply just go there and add a comment and say true positive, false positive, and whatnot, and then put your remarks on it. And they are inevitable. They will always come up, especially when the names are quite similar and all of that. Especially when you're doing a search by name. When you're doing a search by ID number and whatnot, then there's like zero risk. But we're doing a search, especially for the sanction screening and whatnot, we still rely on name searches today. And so if you're doing a search by name and there is a false positive, which is sometimes inevitable, just mark it accordingly. Okay, someone is asking, how do I get probe compliance to make a presentation to my organization? There's a link that will be put in the chat. If you want to book a demo, you can click that. We're also planning like for these people who have attended this session, we're also planning a group, what we call a group demo, where we're going to be able to demonstrate the solution to you en masse. And so if you're interested in, we'll be reaching out to you after the session with the email addresses that you registered with. So if you want to be, once you get the email, check your spam or whatever, because sometimes that's where it goes. Respond to it so that we can have that group demo sessions on our modules. Let's move on. Okay, I think I've taken, okay, there's one I skipped. I filed a CTR on Go AML. This is from Damilola. I filed a CTR on Go AML, but later came back as being rejected with the error message, duplicated transaction numbers. Please, what could have been the cause? Who wants to take this? Like I said, this is also not quite on topic, but if there's anybody that can take this for her, I'll appreciate.
Let me take it from
let me attempt that. What happened? Yeah. There are so many reasons that can cause that response from Go ML. Could be you could have to verify to confirm that you have filled the necessary field and fill it right. The format have been adopted. Sometimes a little thing can cause that return or rejection of that. So just go through to it and then ensure that you are filling of information and the document, information you fill are correct and appropriately filled. But after checking up on that and it still happens, sometimes there could be a technical issues from their end for which you need to reach out to them. And sometimes they have confirmed that, yes, there was a problem at a particular time. But if it becomes a continuous issue, then it must be that there may be specific or peculiar issue that has to do with it, because there have been instances also where several organizations are being able to file, but it becomes peculiar. I've had that instances with some of my clients. They discovered that just from their own organization, they are not able to file their returns, and yet others in the same industry are having. So you have to be a matter of trying to contact NFIU, and they are always willing to render assistance. So engage them, and they'll be able to tell you what has happened that caused that kind of a return.
All right, thank you so much. I'm seeing a question here. It doesn't look complete, but can you tailor your illustrations of structuring or smurfing in line with insurance policies to relatively communicate to the insurance sector? I think I understand what this person is trying to say.
Okay, let me take it. Yeah, let me take it. Smurfing or structuring is in intentionally intentionally breaking your premium to avoid reporting requirement, to avoid meeting up a threshold where you have, for instance, you know that reporting requirement is 5 million for individual and 10 million for corporate entities. Then you now intentionally, because you don't want to file returns, and you say, okay, that person should, maybe the premium can be divided to 3 million and 2 million. That is making it to reduce making it now non-reportable. And then also, or probably for corporate entity, you now have something like 10 million, 3 million and 7 million. But you know that the system can always get you up, because whenever you have a system, they can match transactions and filings. So when it is matched up and consolidated together and discovered that those things were filed almost at the same time, that raises up suspicion to them. So there's no need of actually doing that. If you have nothing to, I think most people who do that thing actually out of $8, because as a business, if you have nothing to hide or nothing to fear, there's no need of being afraid of filing your returns. So file it up, and then if there's any issue, they will be able to know that. And if there's anything that's suspicious, you are supposed to actually file by yourself, not even waiting for NFIU or anybody to flag off on you. So that is what smurfing is. So premium being intentionally. I know it could be, there could be a case or cases where such thing can be normal. For instance, organizations managing their finances, or probably there's no signatory available that can make payment for above a particular threshold. Those are circumstances that can happen. So it's not as if every money broken are smurfing, but when it becomes intentional that you didn't want to file returns and they suspect that and I call you up, and they also look at your financial statement or your income or bank statement and discover that it was actually fund at that time, that become an issue. So that is what smurfing is about, where a client, when you see that kind of thing yourself, it's a red flag. In fact, before the 2022 Act, it was merely a red flag, but after that, it had become a crime. So whoever does that, it has committed a criminal offense. So it's no longer mere red flag. For you as a compliance officer, once you see that, that should throw a red flag for you, that something must be phishing. And as a red flag, you may not need to go very far to go and verify. You are expected to file that suspicious transaction return. The NFIU can carry out their own investigation to know whether or not it was, except if you have a client where you had a payment plan arrangement with, and that kind of thing is something that can be considered. So there are many ways you can look at it, but smurfing is intentionally breaking premium to avoid reporting threshold.
All right. Thank you so much for that response. I think we are done here. Please check in the chat. You'll see how to continue to engage with us. I mentioned here that if you registered with us, we will send you an invitation when we want to. What is coming next is the group onboarding, and it will come very soon. Sorry, not onboarding, demo. In that, we'll actually demonstrate all of these things that we have said. You know, it's one thing to say I can help you identify PEPs, or I can help you do sanction screening. Another thing to show you how it actually works. So that's the next session that is coming up. If the email address details that you provided when you were registering is not where you want to receive that information, we can put a link in the chat for you to fill a form where we can collect the information that you want to provide to us. But we intend to email all the persons that registered for this event to let them know when that one is coming up. If you want to stay engaged with Probe, you can follow us on LinkedIn. The links are all in the chat and they'll be shared again. We're on LinkedIn, we're on X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We are constantly sharing as we learn. Yes, we're constantly sharing as we learn new things or learn of new regulations. We're constantly having sessions of this sort. So if you want to book a demo individually, you can. But like I said, the next plan is to have the group session with all of you who are present at this event. So look out for the invitation. Like I said, please look out in your spam because sometimes it does go there. I'm mentioning again our social media channels, LinkedIn, Twitter. The links have all been shared. Follow, like, comment. If we didn't answer your question, you can ask us there. Yeah, I see someone else also has asked for us to put the CBN circular here. Please put it here. We did not share slides during this event. What we did was go through questions on the slide. So there really isn't there really aren't slides to share. But if you have shared your email address with us, when the meeting is over, you will automatically get a link from Teams where you can watch the recap. So you'll be able to do that. Yeah, I think that is about all. I'm trying to just make sure I haven't missed anybody. If I missed you, I'm so sorry. I'm scrolling through now to see. Yeah, so there was a question I saw about core banking app and integration and how we're not. If your core banking app cannot integrate with us, it's because it doesn't have the capabilities, but we do. And we have connected with several core banking apps that have the API capabilities. So the barriers to integration that I've seen is you don't have the technical know-how on your side. And where that is the case, we're able to support, although sometimes that may come at a cost. And where you have the technical teams on ground, we share our API documentation with you, and we can connect with your CBA. And that is the advised way, actually, especially for transaction monitoring. It is far more convenient and simple to connect via API than to try any other way. So we've gone far ahead. Those who are interested in demo, like I said, if you registered properly, the email address that you registered with will receive an invitation to the group demo session, which should come up pretty soon. So be on the lookout. Check your check your spam box. If you visit our website, you should also find numbers that you can call. You can send us messages on the forms if you haven't received anything. But we'll, just like we publicize this event, we'll publicize that as well, where we can demonstrate. You can go to the website, contact us, enter any information there if you need to. But we definitely will have that session for everyone, where we take you through our modules, the one that starts the customer relationship for onboarding and the one that continues the due diligence process with transaction monitoring. So I'm going to have to bring the Q&A to a close here. We really appreciate all of your questions and hope that you are satisfied with the responses that we have provided. Please put your hands together for yourselves. Those were really, really brilliant questions. And I hope that you're satisfied with our panelists. I feel super enlightened by this session, to be honest. I feel like I've learned a lot. And I hope that you feel that way as well, that you feel empowered and educated about the topic, which is, like I said, going back to what we
thank you very much. I think, can I just comment on something I mentioned? I just got from to confirm. Somebody asked whether NIN can be accepted for place of STR. Yes, there was a circular that I've been at NFI. You have accepted that for insurance industry to NIN can be used in the place of a BVN. Since there are challenges, I just got through to a circular now from NIA that communicated to the industry that NIA can be accepted, but only for STR filing. So that's an agreement between the industry and NFI. It's just another person that asked that question.
Okay, for STR filing specifically, I think it's important to note what it is.
Yes.
So thank you all so very much for your time. Like I said, I believe that just like me, you've learned a lot from this session. Stay connected with us. If you follow us on social media, you will know when we're having the next one and you'll be able to join. The plan is to continue to have these sessions to educate and to make sure everyone understands it in a very thorough sense. What is all of this about? Why is there a secular?
Really, really sorry to interrupt. Somebody is still asking I think I was mid-sharing the screen for a PEP, and not everyone could see the screen. So they've got someone still asking. I don't know if we've got 2 minutes to quickly show that. Literally 2 minutes.
Yeah, let's go ahead, and then that will be the last thing.
Yes, apologies. Yes, apologies. I'm just going to quickly show that now. As I said very, very quickly, we have our own dedicated PEP database, and the standards are we take a name, image, relatives, and close associates. Because with the PEP, you have to get information of relatives and close associates. I'm just checking that you can all see my screen, right? Or at least most people can see my screen. So very quickly, I'll go very, very quickly to a PEP that was searched on before. Okay, I think I don't know if this is a PEP now. Delicate fire share, I think he is. There are many screens. There's a risk rating. When you see PEP, RCA, CPC, a high risk rating for PEPs. But to go on to the PEP himself, we will go on to the. I'm going to find a better example. of a recent PEP. Just bear me one moment, quick, please, on my systems. So if I go to my history, and I believe the example I was looking at was this example here, Peter Odile. I don't know exactly what state he is, but essentially we have our PEP database. There's 3 hits under there. All our PEPs, relatives and close associates, for our own databases, we add images to make it very easy for you to distinguish. So as you can see with Peter Odile, there were 3 separate hits identified. That I believe is the son of the PEP. That's why you have Odile Peter but Junior. You've got RC here. RC stands for relative and close associate of the PEP. So we keep those records as well. This is the PEP in question. There's always an image of the PEP. There's always a profile of the PEP to discount the PEP from any other potential, because there could be 50,000 Peter Odiles in the world. You have middle names were held and you have the date of birth of the PEP. So it's very, very easy for you to then say, this individual that's sitting in front of me, either with his ID or whatever, you can compare the images, you can compare the date of birth. It's highly unlikely that you have a Peter Odile that's born on the exact same day that has the exact same image. That then means it's the individual. It's as simple as that. And as mentioned, we capture all known relatives and close associates to the PEP. Even the ones that are unfortunately deceased, because we've identified that there's a lot of fraud with names of deceased individuals. Somebody else will come and say is actually this person with the exact same date of birth, exact same name, but obviously a different image. So that's how comprehensive our PEP database is for Africa.
Right.
Sorry about the issues we had previously. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. In the absence, so I know that people may have further questions, but we do have to close. We've been on since 11, and a good number of people have already left. I want to thank everyone, the panelists, our wonderful panelists. Please give them a final round of applause for their brilliant contributions. It's been brilliant. It's been so very brilliant. You can tell when the person who is seasoned is speaking about the subject, they're able to bring it to angles that we've not considered before. So thank you, wonderful panelists. Also, I want to thank our wonderful attendees for your questions, your claps, your emojis. I hope that you've enjoyed this as much as I have. I believe that you have. I want to again remind us, follow us on the social platforms, because we do organize events like this all the time. So follow us on the social platforms so that you're aware. We try to also take the lead in making sure that when regulators put out information, we're sharing it with you as well in digestible formats. So thank you so much. Unfortunately, we cannot take any further questions. So if you have a question, put it on the website, on our social media platform. Someone will come to it in good time. Thank you so much. And this is the end of today's session. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.